We share opportunities. That was the line my father used at the kitchen table. He meant I should hand my Rhodes Scholarship to my 19-year-old brother. They had been packaging him for it since he was 14. The wrong child had won it first. My mother nodded. Caleb smiled. I didn't argue. My brother was 19. He had never lived alone for a weekend. He had never paid a phone bill. 22 years of dinners. Not one had been for me. The flight to the interview I had taken alone. The envelope I had opened in the philosophy building stairwell, alone. $120,000 across 2 years. And an ocean. They wanted me to hand it over the salt and pepper. What they did not know was that I had already signed. I didn't tell them. Not that night, not for 14 more weeks. If this story is already getting under your skin, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's listening. I'm May, 22, and this is the story of the night my family found out the scholarship had a date stamp. Let's go back to the kitchen where the wrong child kept winning. I was born in West Hartford, Connecticut, in a house my parents had bought before either of them was 30. White siding, a maple in the front yard. A street where every Sunday somebody was mowing a lawn. My father is Joseph Carrington, software engineer, 28 years at the same insurance company on the edge of downtown. He likes systems. He keeps the family iCloud on his laptop the way some men keep ledgers. He installed it. He organized the folders. He knows the password. When I was 8, he taught me how to back up a school report onto our shared documents folder. He said, "Save it where I can see it, and you'll never lose it." I did not think about that sentence again until I was 22. My mother is Lydia Carrington. She runs a small home decor shop on the east end of West Hartford. Hand-painted bowls, linen runners, Christmas ornaments shaped like small wooden houses. She has a sales voice that makes neighbors buy things they do not need. She uses it often. My brother is Caleb, 19, sophomore at Dartmouth. He was 9 when his 4th grade teacher used the word gifted, and from that month onward, everything in our house orbited the word. He had the bigger bedroom by 15. He had a $400 telescope by 10. He had a debate coach by 12. He had a private CT tutor for an entire summer. When he was admitted to Dartmouth, my mother had it engraved on a small brass plate she hung over the mantel. She used the word we. We did it. We got in. I never had a plate on the mantel. What I had was a job. 2, actually. Library shelving on weekday nights and weekend mornings. Essay tutoring in the back lounge of the philosophy building 3 afternoons a week. Those gigs paid my dorm fee. They paid the part of Ashbridge that my merit scholarship didn't cover. They paid for the airline ticket I had bought the previous October when a letter from the American Secretary of the Rhodes Trust asked me to come to Boston for an interview. My mother called my work your little gigs. My father called them the path you chose. When I started at Ashbridge, a small liberal arts college, an hour and a half from Hartford by the old Saybrook line, my mother told me she was proud of me. Then she told me she was proud of Caleb. Then she invited me to come home for real family events, by which she meant Caleb's awards, Caleb's parents' weekends, Caleb's Dartmouth move-in day. I went home 4 times my freshman year. 3 were for Caleb. I learned to send my acceptance letters by email only. I learned to open them in stairwells. I learned that if I told my mother about anything I had won, she had a way of saying, "That's lovely, honey," and changing the subject so smoothly that by the end of the night I would forget what I had come home to say. I had. By the fall of my senior year, when an envelope from the Rhodes Trust arrived in my campus mailbox, addressed in calligraphy, I read it twice in the stairwell, twice in my dorm room, and once aloud to no one. Then I called Dr. Adrienne Whitfield, my advisor, my referee, the woman who had read every paper I had submitted at Ashbridge, and told her. I told nobody else for 10 days. I did, of course, eventually tell my parents. I waited for Sunday. I drove down. I sat at the kitchen table. I brought the printout in my bag because I thought I should have it on hand if my father asked to read it. My father did not ask to read it. My father said, "We share opportunities." He said it the way you would say, "Pass the salt." My mother nodded. Caleb smiled. I didn't argue. I drove back to Ashbridge that night, and in the dorm parking lot, I sat in the car for a long minute with my hands flat on the wheel and decided what I was going to do. I was going to sign the letter. I was not going to tell them. There is a memory I have from when I was 7 that I have never told anybody. It is a Saturday morning. I am at the kitchen counter with a graham cracker in my hand. The kitchen window has blue curtains, and the morning is bright enough that the light splits the counter into 2 halves, one warm, one cool. My mother is on the phone. The cord is the kind you have to step over. She has not noticed I am eating in the kitchen. "We weren't planning on her, honestly," she says. Then 2 years later, we got Caleb. The surprise we'd actually been hoping for. She laughs. The laugh has a small bell shape to it. Polite. The kind you make at the end of a sentence you want to keep. I take a bite of the cracker. The taste is salty. When my mother hangs up, she walks past me and does not look down. The curtain catches her shoulder on the way through. The light on the counter shifts. I never finish the cracker. There is a memory from when I was 12. My father has come home with a long cardboard box. The box has a picture of a telescope on it. The telescope is $400, which I know because my father has been talking about it at dinner for a week. The telescope is for Caleb, who has just turned 9 and asked about Saturn. My father carries it into the den. I am 12. I have just been accepted into a summer art program. The program costs $80. I have asked for it 3 times. My father says money's tight this year, May. He says it in the same voice he uses for the news. A week later, Caleb scratches the eyepiece of the telescope and gives up on Saturn. The telescope ends up under the den table for 2 months before my mother asks me to put it in the basement. I found it on the carpet. The metal is cold. There is a single hair-thin scratch on the lens, like a fingernail mark. I wipe it with my sleeve and put the telescope on a shelf. Nobody asks where it went. I never see it again. There is a memory from when I was 16. It is breakfast. Caleb is 13. He is pouring cereal in his pajamas. He has the kind of bowl I have asked him not to use because it is the only nice bowl we have. He looks at me over the rim of the bowl. "Mom said I get the bigger bedroom when I start high school," he says. He pours milk. "She said you'd understand. I moved my things that weekend. The new room is smaller by maybe 4 feet across. The window catches less of the morning light. The closet hinge sticks. When I sit on the edge of the bed for the first time, the mattress sinks a little lower than my old one. I stand up. I put the books on the shelf in the order I had them in my old room. The bookshelf is one shelf short. I rearrange the books. The rearranging takes me longer than the move. My mother stops by the doorway at one point. She looks in. She says, "It's a sweet little room, isn't it, May?" Her voice has the sales tone in it, the same tone she uses when a customer is touching a candle she thinks they should not buy. I say, "It's sweet." She nods and goes downstairs. She does not come back upstairs. There is a memory from when I was 18. I am in my last year of high school. I've applied to 7 colleges. The letters come in March. They come on different days in different envelopes. And the rule in our house has always been that the mail goes onto the break front in the front hall, and the person it is addressed to opens it. The rule has been like this since I was 11. In March of that year, 3 of my letters came. My mother brings them in from the front porch. 2 are on the break front when I get home from school. The third one is not. The third one is from Williams College. The third one is the one I have most wanted. I have applied for a writing fellowship that pays the first year of tuition in full. I know the fellowship letter and the acceptance arrive in the same envelope. A friend whose older sister won the same fellowship 2 years before has told me this. I have been waiting 9 weeks. I do not see the Williams envelope for 9 more days. On the 9th day, I found it. It is in the recycling bin, under a J. Crew catalog in the kitchen. The seal has been broken. The acceptance letter is inside. The fellowship letter is inside. They are dated 2 weeks before I found them. I take both letters to my mother. I do not yell, I do not cry. I hold them up. I say, "Did you open this?" She says, "Oh, sweetheart, I was going to give it to you with the others. We were going to celebrate. I had wanted to make a cake." I say, "Did you call the fellowship office?" She says, "I told them you were still considering, that you had family discussions to have. They were lovely about it. They said it could be deferred a year. It cannot be deferred a year." By the time I get on the phone with the fellowship office, the slot has been offered to the alternate. The alternate accepts within the hour. I attend Ashbridge instead on partial merit with 2 part-time jobs. My mother frames the Williams letter and tells our neighbors it is May's other acceptance. She chose Ashbridge for the small college experience. I never see the letter again. I think it is in the basement. There is a memory from when I was 20. Caleb is at Ashbridge for a weekend to see what a real college looks like, because his admissions counselor has suggested he visit a small school as a comparison. He is 16 and going to be a senior at the prep school my parents stretched the household to afford. He spends the weekend in my dorm room. He sits on my bed. He opens my laptop without asking. "I'm bad at this part," he says. He uses the voice he uses when he wants to sound younger and softer than he is. "Just let me borrow a couple of yours as templates. For shape." I do not speak that voice well. The voice was for our mother. Caleb learned it because he knew our mother responded to it. He had been practicing on her since he was 8. He opens the folder labeled Essays Final. He scrolls. Mom said you owe me one for the room thing, remember? The radiator clicks. The coffee from the hall machine has a slight metal taste. In the dark window behind Caleb, I can see his reflection. And the reflection is smiling the same way it smiled at the cereal bowl when he was 13. I close the laptop. He laughs. He says he will ask Mom to email me about it later. He does not have to. The next week, my mother calls. She says, "Caleb's stressed, honey. You know how Caleb gets when he's stressed. Just send him the essays." I send him 3. What I learned over 22 years is this. Every time I push back, my mother calls me selfish. Every time I push back, my father calls me ungrateful. Caleb does not call me anything. Caleb just looks at my mother, and my mother calls me selfish for him. By 22, I have learned to put my wins in a sealed envelope and to tell no one until the date is signed. I had not yet imagined a day when even a signed date would not be enough. The Sunday I drove down from Ashbridge with the roads printout in my bag, my mother had cooked a roast. She does that when she wants something. She thinks roast is a neutralizing food. She thinks it makes everyone slower and softer. She is not wrong about most people. The roast was on a blue serving dish. The dish had a small chip on the rim where my father had set it down too hard once. My father was at the head of the table. My mother sat to his right. Caleb sat across from me. He was home from Dartmouth for the weekend. He had a Dartmouth fleece on. He had cut his hair shorter since Thanksgiving. I waited until my mother passed the rolls. I said, "I have something to tell you all. The Rhodes Trust called me on Tuesday. They've named me the District 2 Scholar. I'd like you to know." My mother stopped with the basket of rolls in her hand. Her smile did not move. The basket moved. She set it down a little too gently. My father said nothing for 14 seconds. I counted. Then he said, "Rhodes? Oxford Rhodes?" I nodded. He said, "We share opportunities." It came out of him the way a system command comes out of a console. Direct, untroubled. He did not look angry. He did not look surprised. He looked like a man reading a status report. My mother said, "Joseph, let's not. We're proud of her." "Of course we are. Aren't we proud of her, Caleb?" Caleb said, "Yeah, congrats, May." He kept eating. My mother said, "But you also have to understand. Caleb's been working toward this since middle school. Everyone who knows our family has been told he's going to do it. We've spent years making it the brand of the family, the neighborhood, the Dartmouth track, the professors we've reached out to. If you take this slot now, out of nowhere, you don't just take it from him, May. You take it from the brand." I said, "I didn't take it from him. I won it." She said, "Honey, don't be that word. Selfish. We've never been selfish in this family." My father said, "We share opportunities. That's our family rule. You've heard it your whole life. There's no winners and losers under this roof. We share." I looked at the chip on the rim of the blue dish. I said, "Okay." I do not remember most of the rest of dinner. I remember Caleb passed me the gravy boat at one point. I remember my mother brought out a coconut cake she had baked, because she always bakes a coconut cake when she has gotten her way. I remember my father saying, "You're a good daughter, May. We're proud of you for being mature about this. I remember nodding. I remember my mother walking me to the front door with her arm around my waist and saying, "We'll figure out a graceful way to tell Rhodes you've reconsidered. Caleb will apply next year. We'll all sit down and write the letter together." "Okay." I said, "I'll be in touch with my referee." She squeezed my hip. "Good girl." I drove back to Ashbridge in the dark. The freeway lights came in a slow rhythm. I did not cry. I felt my pulse in the steering wheel where my hands had been clenched for 60 miles. But I did not cry. In the parking lot of my dorm, I sat in the car for a long minute with the engine off. I looked at the printout on the passenger seat. The envelope was a thick cream paper. The seal was navy. My name was in calligraphy on the front. I looked at it for a long time. What my mother had heard was, "I'll let my referee know I'm withdrawing." What my father had heard was, "I'll get Dr. Whitfield to write a graceful letter." What Caleb had heard was, "It's mine now." What I had actually said was, "I'll be in touch with my referee." I had not promised anything. I had not used the word withdraw. I had not used the word decline. I had not promised a letter or a graceful exit. I had only said I would be in touch with a woman who had stayed late 3 nights a week to read my drafts. I knew, sitting in the parking lot, that the people who had raised me would never read that sentence the way I had said it. They had decided what they wanted to hear before I opened my mouth. I went up to my dorm. I unlocked the third drawer of my desk. I took out the acceptance form the Rhodes Trust had sent with the letter. I read it twice. I signed it. The date next to my signature was January 15th, 2025. I put it in the prepaid return envelope. I walked it down to the campus mailroom at 11:42 at night. I dropped it in the slot. I heard the soft slap of the envelope hitting the bottom of the bin. I walked back to the dorm. I did not call anyone. If this part of the story has hit a nerve, if someone in your family has ever called you selfish for refusing to give up something you earned, I would love to hear about it. Drop one sentence in the comments. Just one. You don't have to explain it. Sometimes naming it is enough. For 3 weeks after I mailed the form, my parents and I did the strangest dance I have ever been part of. My mother called me on Tuesdays. The Tuesday call had been our ritual since freshman year, but it had become something else now. She did not mention Rhodes. She did not ask about Dr. Whitfield. She talked about the shop. She talked about the cousins. She talked about Caleb's mid-semester grades. She talked about everything except the thing. My father did the same. His version of the dance was different. He sent me articles. A Wall Street Journal piece about family wealth strategies. A New York Times op-ed about the trap of individualism in modern American childhood. A blog post by a Stanford professor about delayed gratification. He did not write a single sentence in his emails. The subject lines said, "Thought you'd like this." That was all. Caleb did not call me. Caleb posted on Instagram a Dartmouth library shot, a row of philosophy books, the caption, "Drafting." The drafting emoji was a small graphite pencil. I watched all of this happen at a distance. I taught my essay tutoring sessions in the philosophy lounge. I shelved books at the library Sunday morning. I went to my senior thesis seminar. I had coffee with Dr. Whitfield on Thursday afternoons. She knew. She had not asked questions when I told her I would handle my family on my own timeline. She had simply said, "I'll make sure the regional office and your files stay in order. We're proud of you, May." Then on the morning of February 9th, I opened my email and there was a message from Dr. Whitfield with no subject line. "May, I want to make sure you're aware. The Ashbridge Roads office received a phone call yesterday from a woman who identified herself as your mother. She asked, on what she called your behalf, whether the scholarship could be transferred to your brother if you formally declined. I returned the call this morning and clarified that the award is not transferable. I felt you should know in writing. A W." I read the email 3 times. I did not move from the chair. The radiator in my dorm room clicked the way it always did at 8 a.m. in early February. The corner of my window was fogged. A woman who identified herself as your mother. I had not authorized anyone to speak for me. My mother had not asked me. My mother had picked up the phone of her own accord on a Saturday in February and called the office of an institution she had never been inside, and she had used my name to inquire whether the thing I had won could be given to my brother. She had done this between the Tuesday call about the cousins and the Tuesday call about the shop. She had not mentioned it to me on either Tuesday. I closed my laptop. I sat for a long time. I did not call her. Later that morning, I made myself open the family iCloud on my laptop. It had been months since I had checked the shared folders. I had stopped using them after my freshman year when I had figured out that my father could see anything I saved there. I had moved my schoolwork to a private drive, but the shared folder still existed. My old essays were still in there. The folder was called May Schoolwork. It had not been updated by me in 3 years. The folder had been accessed 8 days ago. The device tag said, Joseph's MacBook. I scrolled. There was a subfolder I had created in my sophomore year. It was called Essays Final. It contained the philosophy papers I had written in 2022. Inside the subfolder, the modification dates were original. The access dates were 8 days ago. There were 4 files. I closed the family iCloud window. I opened my brother's Instagram. He had posted again that morning. A coffee, a laptop, a glimpse intentionally of a Word document on the laptop screen. The visible paragraph began with a phrase I knew word for word. The procedural neutrality of justice in Rawls is itself a substantive moral claim. That was my opening line. I had written it in October of 2022 for a paper Dr. Whitfield had given an A+ to. I had used that paper as a writing sample in my Rhodes application. I took a screenshot. I saved it to my private drive. I did not call anyone. The Tuesday phone call from my mother came on schedule that evening. She asked me how the shelving job was going. She asked me whether I had had time to think about the next steps with Rhodes. She used those words, the next steps with Rhodes. She did not ask me whether I had declined yet. She said only, "Don't drag it out, sweetheart. Caleb's preparing his materials." I said, "I won't drag it out." She said, "Good girl." After I hung up, I sat on my dorm room floor with my back against my desk and the carpet cold under my legs. What I had to do, I now understood, was not a confrontation. It was not a courtroom. It was not an essay. What I had to do was a folder, a single ordered, dated folder, hand-delivered at the right moment, in front of the right room. I started building it that night. I drove to the road's regional office on a Saturday in early March. The office was on the third floor of an academic building at Williams College, 20 miles north of Ashbridge. I had emailed Dr. Whitfield in advance. She had set up the meeting. The coordinator on duty was a woman in her late 40s, with a wool blazer and the steady eyes of a person who had read 400 personal statements a year for 15 years. Her name on the badge was M. Carmichael. I gave her my full name. I gave her my application number. I gave her the file copy of the acceptance form I had mailed in January. She pulled my file. She turned the laptop screen toward me. The trust's records were clean, my signature, my date, their counter stamp the week after. I was, as of January 22nd, 2025, the officially confirmed Rhodes Scholar for District 2. I asked her gently whether the regional office had received any calls from family members. She typed for a moment. On the 8th of February, she said, a Mrs. Lydia Carrington called to inquire about transfer of award in the event of voluntary withdrawal. The call was forwarded to Ashbridge's office because we direct family-side inquiries to the Home Institutions Coordinator. Dr. Whitfield returned the call later that morning. I said, was a transcript made? She said, a call log, a summary memo, both signed, both saved in your file. I asked her if I could have a copy of the call log and the memo. She said the trust does not release internal call logs to scholars or family. But, she added, the Ashbridge office, as the receiving institution, had a record of Dr. Whitfield's outgoing response, and Dr. Whitfield was free to share her own notes with me at her discretion. I drove back to Ashbridge with the file copy and a single page of typed notes from Dr. Whitfield that began with the date, the time, the duration of the call, and the line. Mrs. Carrington indicated she was contacting on behalf of her daughter regarding voluntary withdrawal and transfer. I clarified that the award is non-transferable, that voluntary withdrawal would not create a successor seat, and that any inquiry beyond confirmation of award status should come from the scholar herself. I read it twice in the parking lot. I put it in a manila folder. I labeled the folder, in pencil, Reception, May 24th. On April 18th, my phone rang during my Friday office hours in the Philosophy Lounge. I had 3 undergraduates waiting for essay help on Mill. Dr. Whitfield's name was on the screen. I excused myself and stepped out into the corridor. May, she said, I want to ask you something. Your brother sent me an essay yesterday. He asked me, as a professional courtesy, he said, to read it and give him feedback on its strength as a writing sample for next year's cycle. The argument is on Rawls and procedural fairness. The opening paragraph, May. I have read it before. I read it in 2022. I read it from you. I said, yes. She said, do you want me to confront him? I said, no. I want you to do exactly what you would have done with any first-year graduate-level submission. Read it. Make notes. Hold them. Don't send him feedback yet. There was a pause on her end. May, I should tell you, also the regional director, Dr. Marion Whitfield. She stopped herself and laughed quietly. The 2 Whitfields shared a surname by accident. They had run the joke for 15 years. Excuse me. The regional director, Dr. Marion Whitfield, is planning to attend Ashbridge's senior reception on May 24th. She does this for one scholar per cycle. This year, that scholar is you. Should I let her know what we are sitting with? I said yes, quietly, and ask her if she would be willing to greet my family in person. A pause, a longer one. She said, May, are you sure? I said I would not have asked Caleb to write his own essay. I'm not going to ask anyone to confront him for me. I'm going to give my mother a folder and let two professional women do their professional jobs in front of a press desk. She said, all right. I went back into the lounge. The three undergraduates had pulled their chairs into a small triangle. I sat with them. We talked about Mill on Liberty for 45 minutes. That weekend, I drove home to West Hartford. My mother had set up a place card with my name on it. The place card had a small dried flower on it. The flower was a lavender stem, the kind she sells in tied bundles at the shop. She was being especially soft with me. She told me she had invited a few extra people to my senior reception. She told me she had bought a new blouse for the occasion. She told me she was so glad I had handled the family thing with grace. I said, I'm glad too. She put her hand on my arm before I could leave the dining room. She said, Sweetheart, come here for a minute. I want to show you something. She led me to the small built-in cabinet in the living room. The cabinet had been her mother's. She had filled it over 20 years with what she called the family's tokens. The middle three shelves were entirely Caleb's. The debate medals from middle school, the brass plate from Dartmouth, the third place trophy from the state geography bee, the framed letter from his high school headmaster, a row of small ribbons in the colors of his prep school. On the top shelf, off-center, was the framed Phi Beta Kappa note I had once seen in the laundry hamper. The note was tilted. She said, when Caleb is a Rhodes Scholar next year, I want you to be proud of him. Promise me you'll be the bigger sister. I looked at the cabinet. I looked at the tilt on my own framed note. I said, of course, Mom. She kissed my temple. She said, good girl. I went upstairs after dinner. I checked the family iCloud one more time. There was a folder on Joseph's MacBook Drive labeled C, Prep Materials. I scrolled. The folder contained 4 of my essays. The file names had been changed. The opening lines were still mine. I closed the laptop. I went downstairs. I told my mother I had to drive back to school. She kissed my cheek at the door. She said, we are so proud of you, sweetheart. She did not know which word she was using. I drove back to Ashbridge. I locked the folder in the third drawer of my desk. I waited. There is a particular kind of silence that fills a small liberal arts college in the last 3 weeks of a senior spring. The library empties out by 10 p.m. instead of midnight. The cherry trees on the quad blossom for 9 days and then drop their petals all at once across the brick paths so that, for a week, every step you take sounds slightly soft. The seniors stop attending classes. The juniors notice and resent it. The freshmen panic about whether they will pass. I attended my classes. I went to my office hours. I shelved books at the library 3 nights a week. I did not change anything in my routine. Dr. Adrienne Whitfield and I met for coffee on Thursday afternoons in a small cafe off the main quad that had a courtyard with a fountain in it. The fountain had been donated by an alum of the class of 1962, whose name was on a brass plaque around the base. Dr. Whitfield always sat with her back to the fountain. The first Thursday in May, she pushed an envelope across the table. "Dr. Marion Whitfield will attend the reception," she said. "She has been briefed. She has reviewed the file. She would like to greet your family informally. She has agreed not to make a scene. She has also agreed not to make a speech." I said, "Good." She said, "May, I have to ask you one more time. Are you certain you want this to be the form?" I said, "Yes." She looked at me for a moment. "There will be press," she said. "Hartford Courant Local Desk, the alumni magazine, a regional NPR affiliate sometimes attends. Your family will see them. They will be photographed. There is no taking that back." I said, "I am not asking for anything to be taken back. I am asking for it to be on the record." She nodded. She drank her coffee. The fountain made a small spilling sound behind her. The second week of May, my mother sent me a text. The text said, "Daddy and I are coming on the 24th. Caleb says he wants to bring 2 friends from Dartmouth. He says it would mean a lot to him to be there to support you. I hope that's okay." I read it 3 times. I typed back, "It is okay." The day after that, Caleb posted on Instagram. The post was a photograph of a Dartmouth coffee cup on a desk next to a copy of A Theory of Justice. The caption was, "Future RS 2026. I did not screenshot it. The internet remembers without me. On May 17th, a week before the reception, my mother called. The Tuesday call was on its usual night. She said she had bought a new gold pin to wear to the ceremony. She had also bought one for me. She said she had picked one with a small laurel leaf on it because she thought it was symbolic. She said she had picked one for Caleb because she wanted him to feel included. I did not ask her why he needed to feel included at his sister's senior reception. She said, "May, sweetheart, there's something I want to ask you. When you're up there, when you speak and Caleb is sitting with us, can you mention him? Just a sentence, just to recognize the family. It would mean so much. He's been working so hard." I said, "I have already written my speech." She said, "Oh, well, if you can fit him in, I'm just asking." I said, "I'll do what I think is appropriate." She said, "Of course, sweetheart, of course." I hung up. I did not change my speech. On May 21st, I drove home for the night. The family was very calm. My mother served chicken. My father drank 2 beers. Caleb wore his Dartmouth tie at dinner for practice, my mother said. He laughed and tugged at it. He said, "Practice for what?" She said, "For Saturday." He said, "All right." My father said, "Tell Mom what your friends are bringing." Caleb said, "Sam's bringing his camera. Eli's bringing his suit. They're going to make it look good." My father said, "Good boy." I sat at the table and did not look up from my plate for the entire meal. I had stopped trying to read what they meant. I had only one job left, which was to drive to the reception on Saturday with the folder. Late that night, I went to the family iCloud one last time. I wanted to make sure I had the most recent metadata on the essay files. The SAO Prep Materials folder on Joseph's MacBook now had 6 files in it, not 4. 2 of them were new. Both new files had been uploaded in the past 9 days. Both bore the modification timestamps of essays I had submitted in my junior fall. I saved a clean screenshot of the directory tree with the timestamps visible. I printed it. I put it in the folder. The folder was now an inch thick. I drove to Ashbridge in the morning. The senior reception at Ashbridge College is held every year at Cole Hall, which sits on the western edge of the campus and has tall arched windows that face the courtyard with the fountain in it. The hall holds 180 people. The tables are arranged in long parallel rows under hanging brass lamps that the alumni office turns down to half power for atmosphere. The dais sits at the far end, low, 3 steps up. The dean's lectern is wooden, ungilded, with a small reading lamp at the base. I arrived at 6:14 p.m. I was wearing a navy dress my advisor had helped me pick. Plain neckline, pockets. The folder was inside a leather portfolio I carried under my arm. I had practiced walking with it for a week, so the portfolio did not slip. My family arrived at 6:38. My mother came in first. She wore pearl gray. She had pinned a small gold laurel leaf pin to her collar. My father followed. He was in the dark navy jacket he calls his important jacket. Caleb came in behind them with Sam on his left and Eli on his right. Sam carried his camera in a small leather case. Eli wore a slim charcoal suit. They were both 19. They looked clean and very young. My mother saw me from the door and lifted a hand. She walked over with the careful, public smile she uses when she is being watched. She gave me a hug that was firmer than her usual hugs. She said into my ear, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." I said, "Thank you." My father gave me a single nod. He did not hug me. He did not, I noticed, look directly into my face. He turned to the welcome table and asked for the family table assignment. My mother followed him. Caleb came up to me after. He stopped a foot away. He looked for a moment like he might say something. Then he produced his Dartmouth smile and said, "Congrats, sis." I said, "Thank you for coming." He said, "Sam's gonna take pictures. Be ready for one." I said, "I'll be ready." He introduced Sam and Eli with a small flourish. They both shook my hand. Sam said, "We've heard a lot." Eli nodded. I caught a small look passing between them when Caleb's back was turned. I did not interpret it. I filed it. A college steward led my family to their table. I went to my place. At the head of the dais row, Dr. Adrienne Whitfield was already there. So was Professor Marlowe, my senior thesis advisor. So was Jamal, who had brought his fiancée. So was Sienna, who had brought her mother. They were all in dark colors. The lamps overhead were down at half. The room filled. The first hour of the reception was a hybrid. Cocktails on the courtyard side and standing welcome in the hall before the seated portion. Waiters carried trays of seltzer and white wine. The dean's wife shook hands with the alumni near the dais. I watched my mother cross the room with her sales voice on. She was introducing Caleb to 2 of her shop employees, to a married couple from down the street, and to my Aunt Linda, my mother's older sister, who had driven up from Bridgeport for the night. Aunt Linda hugged Lydia, then crossed the parquet floor to find me. "May, sweetheart," she said. "Congratulations, I am so proud of you." I said, "Thanks, Aunt Linda." Aunt Linda glanced once at my mother. She lowered her voice, the way only an older sister can lower her voice about a younger one. "You go off to England, you hear me? You go off and you do whatever you want to do." I did not say anything. My mother appeared at our elbow before Aunt Linda could finish. "Linda, you've got to meet Caleb's friends. They came up from Dartmouth," she said, and she steered Aunt Linda away with a hand on her sister's back. Aunt Linda looked at me over her shoulder. I gave her a half nod. She gave one back. At 6:55, the side door at the back of the hall opened, and a woman in a charcoal blazer with a small gold lapel pin entered. She walked briskly. She did not look at the head table. She went to the welcome desk, signed in, accepted a name card, and was guided to a small auxiliary table near the press riser. Her name card said Dr. Marion Whitfield, Rhodes Trust, Regional Director, District 2. She caught my eye across the room. She inclined her head a fraction of an inch. I inclined mine back. My father came to the welcome table to refill a water glass at 7:02. He saw me on his way past. He stopped. He set the glass down. "May," he said quietly, "when do you announce it?" I said, "Announce what, Dad?" He said, "The letter, the reading. Your mother said you'd read aloud." I said, "I don't have a letter to read aloud. I have a speech." He looked at me. He looked at my speech card on the lectern. He looked at the folder under my arm. He said, "What's in the folder?" I said, "I think you'll want to be standing for it." He took a small, careful step backward. He picked up his glass. He went back to the family table without refilling it. My mother whispered something to him as he sat down. He did not answer her. At 7:10, the lights dimmed by another quarter. The dean climbed the 3 steps to the dais. He welcomed the families. He acknowledged the alumni Rhodes Scholars in the back. He read a short list of the senior honors. Then he said, "And it is my great pleasure to introduce this year's Rhodes Scholar from Ashbridge College, Miss May Carrington." He held out his hand toward me. I stood. I picked up the leather portfolio. I walked not to the dais, but to my family's table. My mother saw me coming. Her smile, for the first time that night, faltered a quarter of an inch. I stopped at her chair. I set the portfolio on the white linen tablecloth between her water glass and her salad fork. I opened it. I turned the top page toward her. The page was a high-resolution scan of my acceptance form. The date stamp was January 15th, 2025. The Rhodes Trust counter stamp was January 22nd, 2025. Both were 5 months old. My mother looked at the page. She did not pick it up. She read it twice. Then she read it a third time, the way you do when the second reading has refused to make sense. My father reached across her, slid the page toward him, and read it. His mouth opened a half inch. He closed it. He read it again. Caleb leaned forward slightly to see. He read the date. He sat back. He did not look at me. He looked instead at the bottom of his own water glass. The dean was still standing at the lectern, waiting for me. There was a low murmur in the hall. My mother whispered, "May." I said, very quietly, only to her, "There are 2 more documents in the portfolio. The second is Dr. Adrian Whitfield's call log from February 8th. The third is a metadata comparison of 4 essays I wrote in 2022. I'd like you to read them when you have a moment. I'd recommend the bathroom." She did not respond. I closed the portfolio. I left it on the table beside her water glass. I turned and walked to the dais. Behind me, I heard my father say to her, in the smallest possible voice, We discussed this at home. I walked up the 3 steps. The dean smiled at me as I passed him. I took my place at the lectern. I set my speech card down. I looked out at the room. The press was at the back, 2 cameras, a small notebook, a reporter from the Hartford Courant local desk. Dr. Marion Whitfield was at her auxiliary table, hands folded over her lapel pin, watching with the quiet steadiness of a woman who had attended 100 of these. I gathered my breath. I said, "Thank you." I had written the speech in one sitting on a Tuesday afternoon in the philosophy lounge, with a radiator clicking and a cup of bad coffee going cold on the table. I had rewritten it twice. I had read it aloud to nobody. It was 93 seconds long. It was the most polite speech I have ever delivered. Thank you. I like to keep this short and say only what matters most tonight. I'm grateful to Dr. Adrienne Whitfield, who read 4 drafts of a paper she did not have to read, and who believed it could become an essay before I did. To Professor Marlowe, for the senior thesis hours that ran past midnight more than once, and to the philosophy department for letting me argue across 2 seminars I had no business taking, to the library night shift, to Jamal, to Sienna, who kept the 3rd floor lamps on past midnight, and who never asked why I needed them on a Tuesday at 3 a.m., to the class of 2025, every one of you who let me read your paragraphs aloud in the lounge so I could hear my own, and to the Alumni Road Scholars who are here tonight. Thank you for showing me that a small college can carry a long letter very far. This award is a beginning. I intend to be worthy of it. Thank you. I stepped back from the lectern. I bowed my head a 1/4 of an inch toward the audience. The dean reached out and shook my hand. The room applauded warmly, and the warmth carried because the people in the audience who did not yet know what was inside the folder on my mother's table heard a clean, restrained, 93-second speech from a senior they had watched grow up on their quad, and the Alumni Road Scholars in the back nodded the way Rhodes Scholars nod when one of their kind has acquitted herself. The dean said, "Cocktails on the courtyard side, dinner in 20 minutes. People stood. I walked off the dais. I did not look at my family's table. I walked to Dr. Adrienne Whitfield, who was waiting at the bottom of the steps. She put her hand on my elbow for a moment. She said, "Good speech." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Dr. Marion's going to greet them now. Stay here for a beat." I stayed. Across the room, Dr. Marion Whitfield stood up from her auxiliary table. She smoothed the front of her charcoal blazer. She had a small, soft leather card holder in her hand. She walked without hurry across the parquet floor toward the long linen tablecloth where the Carrington family was seated. She did not look at me. She kept her chin level. The Carringtons saw her coming. My mother saw her first. My mother's eyes flicked once to the auxiliary table where the name card still read, Dr. Marion Whitfield, Rhodes Trust, Regional Director, District 2. My mother's face did something I had never seen it do before. It was rearranged. The cameras at the back of the room, the Alumni Magazine photographer, the Hartford Courant photographer, both raised their lenses. The reception of a Rhodes Scholar by her parents was, by tradition, a photograph that ran in the local paper. The photographers were good at this. They had been doing it for years. Dr. Marion Whitfield arrived at the table. She put her hand out, palm down, in a polite, formal handshake. She offered it to my mother first. "Mrs. Carrington," she said. "Lovely to finally put a face to the voice." My mother stood up. She had no choice. Her right hand met Dr. Marion Whitfield's. She squeezed gently. She smiled. The cameras clicked. We spoke once. Dr. Marion Whitfield continued, evenly, in the same low conversational pitch a woman uses at a faculty cocktail. February 8th. I'm the coordinator who returned your inquiry. I wanted to confirm in person, while you and I are both here, that we finalized our records. May is our scholar. The award is non-transferable. There is no successor seat, no reserved slot for the next cycle. If May had declined you, which she chose not to, your son would still be applying on his own merits, the same as any other applicant. We don't pass the award down within families. I hope that's clear now. My mother's lips moved. She got one syllable out. The cameras clicked again. Dr. Marion Whitfield kept her hand in my mother's. My mother forced the rest of the sentence. Thank you, Dr. Whitfield. It's such an honor for the family. We're very proud of May. Dr. Marion Whitfield held the handshake 1 second longer than was conversational. Then she released it smoothly. Of course you are, she said. She is a remarkable young woman. The college has done well for her. My mother nodded. She nodded twice. She could not stop nodding. The cameras clicked. My mother's hand went up to her gold laurel leaf pin, touched it, and came down again. Dr. Marion Whitfield turned toward my father. Mr. Carrington, she said, pleasure to meet you. May spoke of you in her statement. My father had not stood. He stood up now. He shook her hand. He said, Joseph. His voice was small. Dr. Marion Whitfield smiled. She said, well, congratulations to all of you on a daughter who has earned every word of tonight. My father said, thank you. Dr. Marion Whitfield turned a quarter step to her left. She looked at my brother. And this, she said, must be Caleb, the brother preparing for next year, I've been told. She offered her hand. Caleb did not have the option of not standing. He stood. He shook her hand. He said, pleased to meet you, ma'am. She held his eye for a half-second longer than she had held my mother's. Then she said, I look forward to seeing your application in the regular cycle. We review them all on merit. No families have advanced standing with us, Caleb. Not even families with a current scholar. You'll be evaluated like everyone else. She let go of his hand. She turned. She walked briskly back to her auxiliary table. The cameras kept clicking. They had been clicking the entire time. For about 8 seconds after Dr. Marion Whitfield sat down, nobody at the Carrington table moved. Then my mother sat back down in her chair. Her hand reached for her water glass. The glass did not shake. The arm shook a little. She caught the arm with her other hand. She drank. My father sat down. He did not reach for his glass. He put both palms flat on the linen tablecloth. Caleb did not sit. He stood for a long second, looking down at his Dartmouth tie. Then he turned to Sam and Eli, who had heard every word, and said, I'm going to get some air. Sam said, Yeah, sure. Eli leaned a quarter inch toward Sam as Caleb walked away. He whispered, just loud enough for Sam to hear, and quite loud enough for me to read his mouth from across the room. Wait, the Rawls thing he sent us at study group. Dr. Whitfield just... Sam said don't. Eli did not finish the sentence aloud. The room around the Carrington table refound its volume. The cocktail conversations resumed. But the ripple traveled. I could see it travel. A Lydia from the shop co-worker at the next table over leaned across her napkin and said, into my mother's ear, "Honey, did she just say you called Rhodes?" My mother did not turn her head. She said, with the sales voice exactly on pitch, "A misunderstanding. We're so proud of May." The co-worker did not look convinced. She looked back at her own husband. The husband raised an eyebrow. She raised one back. 2 tables further, a neighbor from West Hartford who had known my mother for 15 years murmured to his wife, "Successor seat. They've been telling everyone Caleb's next." His wife murmured back, "Mm-hmm." A junior philosophy professor near the press riser leaned to his colleague and said quietly, "I think the regional director just delivered a verdict in a handshake." The colleague said, "Yes, she did." If you have ever sat in a room where the people who told you that you were the problem found out in front of witnesses that they were the problem, and you watched them learn to keep their faces straight because the cameras were on them, please take a moment now to be kind to younger you. Younger you spent a lot of years being told her victory was a family asset. Younger you does not have to apologize for keeping the thing she earned. A boundary is not betrayal. The people who taught you to apologize for your success are the same people who lived off your apology. You are allowed to keep what you won. You are allowed to walk to a lectern with your speech in your hand and thank everyone in the room except the people you came from. They will survive. So will you. Caleb did not come back to the table that night. He left through a side door that led out to the courtyard with the fountain. Eli followed him at a distance of about 10 feet. Sam, after a moment, followed too. I do not know what they said to each other. I know only that when I walked past that side door an hour later on my way to the Alumni Road Scholars Table, the courtyard was empty, and the fountain was still running. And there were 3 half-finished cups of cocktail on the low stone wall around the basin. 2 weeks after senior reception, I packed 2 suitcases and a backpack. I drove to West Hartford on a Tuesday afternoon. I let myself in with my key. The house was empty. My mother was at the shop. My father was at the office. I went up to my old room, the smaller one with the closet hinge that still stuck, and I took the books off the shelf. I took the framed Phi Beta Kappa note that my mother had once said was somewhere in a drawer, and that I had eventually found in the basement laundry hamper. I took my high school yearbooks. I took a small jewelry box my grandmother had given me when I was 7. I took the laundry hamper itself because I had bought it with my own money. I left the room otherwise the way it had been. I closed the door behind me. I drove back to Ashbridge. I stayed in a friend's parents' guest room in New Haven that summer. I worked at a bookstore. I went for runs along a trail. I did not speak to my parents. I exchanged 3 text messages with Caleb in June. He sent, "You good?" I sent back, "I am. Take care of yourself." He sent back, "Yeah." We did not message again that summer. On October 5th, 2025, I flew to London. On October 7th, I arrived at Magdalen College, Oxford. My room overlooked a small lawn with deer at the far end of it. The deer were real and tame and slept on the grass in the afternoons. The first night I sat on the windowsill and watched them, and the bell tower across the cloister rang. And I cried for 2 minutes, and then I unpacked. In late November of 2025, the Next Road cycle closed its applications. Caleb's name was on the list. His Dartmouth referee had quietly withdrawn the recommendation letter in early November. The new referee, Caleb, had managed to find on short notice did not have the standing the first one had. The district committee did not interview him. In April of 2026, my mother sent me a long text. It was the longest text she had ever sent me. She framed it as a family loss. She said she had been thinking about everything. She said the reception had been a misunderstanding. She said Caleb was struggling. She said she missed me. She said she hoped, when I came home, we could put this behind us as a family. I read it twice. I did not write a long reply. I wrote one sentence and sent it. I'm keeping what I won. I went back to my reading. The deer were under the chestnut tree by the wall. I did not cry. The radiator clicked the way it had since the very first week. The bell across the cloister rang the hour. The deer raised their heads at the sound, looked toward the tower, and lay back down in the grass. I had stopped somewhere along the way, needing to.